Good morning. Welcome to the Cross8 webinar on how to put the customer at the heart of your organization. So, bit of a different topic from the commercial ones we've run in the previous webinars and a bit of a different format. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Gary Timlin, who leads our design and architecture practice, John Braithwaite, who leads on our customer experience work, and a guest appearance from Ian Furlong. So Ian is currently CTO at VAS Group, who facilitate property valuations for lenders and brokers. Before becoming a CTO, he worked as a product owner on numerous digital projects, and before that, specialized in customer experience and customer journey consultant. So he's constantly looking at how technology can underpin holistic customer experience and hopefully brings a really interesting dimension to this whole debate. Equally, it's the dream team back together as all three works on implementing customer journeys. So obviously to talk through and a bit less of me talking on this one as I'm just going to host it. Very briefly, most of you will know Cross8. If you don't, the 60-second overview is we specialize in transforming businesses and commercially optimizing them, putting small teams into lead significant change, all the way through from sort of strategy, op models, implementations, and building commercial capability. So we are going to dive straight into the discussion. Intentions would probably run for about 30 to 40 minutes. There is an opportunity to ask questions. If you do have any, either you can load them into the chat and we can see those and I can bring them into the conversation. Or alternatively, if you want to message us either separately or after the event, or if you're listening on demand, obviously please do message us and we will try and answer any questions. So, John, if I can come to you firstly, hopefully we've got a range of participants in the audience who sort of have different understandings of sort of customer experience and customer journey. So can you just give a bit of an overview about how you would frame thinking about customer experience and how that can help organizations?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Toby. So I think what we've found when we're working with various organizations is that businesses can have a really clear view of what their particular product or service that they're selling can do for a customer. And then individuals within various departments can become very focused on delivering that product or service, and they can become focused on either efficiency metrics or on regulatory compliance, or within customer service, within answering so many calls within so many seconds. And this is especially the case when you look at individual departments and they become siloed. And what they forget, and often they forget with no ill intent, is that going through these services is one customer. And this one customer goes from the beginning and, decided to make that purchase. But then as they go through and experience the various different elements of that product or service with a particular company, they get lost along the way because one function doesn't know what another function's doing, and one's focused on answering calls, but a customer service department doesn't realize actually that one customer has to ring up 10 times to get the same issue resolved, and you've answered all of those calls within a particular SLA, but actually have you resolved that customer's issue within that call? So what we found from customer experience is it's about putting the end-to-end together, and that's where customer journey maps come in. And it's around understanding what do customers expect and how do they perceive that service, and where are the gaps between that expectation and the perception of the service, always looking at it from an end-to-end point of view rather than in silos.
I think there's also, to help put it into context, if you're a customer, as if I give some examples, the journey for me is that I might want to go buy a laptop, or I've broken down on the motorway. So hopefully the AA and the RAC and the organisations like those folks will understand the customer journey. or I'm moving home. If you're in the utilities world, moving home is quite an important journey. Whether it's water, whether it's power, or whether it's broadband. I've got a good story that hopefully we'll tell later as we go through this in relation to a customer journey that I'm going through at this point in time. But it's understanding those journeys, and if you understand those journeys, then you can start to map out my touch points, and hopefully you can start to understand what I expect as a customer.
Yeah, very much so, and I think that's the first stage. Is you've actually got to understand and name your customer journeys, and do that across your organization. So, you know, within a financial services organization, you might have a joining journey, a leaving journey, an inquiry journey where somebody makes an inquiry about their mortgage. They want to make an overpayment, they want to make an underpayment, and those can join various different departments together in one end-to-end experience for the customer. So, you know, they need to make a contact. That might start by looking on the website and their digital experience, then move on to speaking to a colleague in a contact center. Then it might be executed by a back office department, and then require another back office department in finance to actually complete that journey, maybe with correspondence, either email or written, as well. And so it's actually bringing those together and then having one champion to own that end-to-end journey. So they're not sat in a department, they're looking at the end-to-end experience.
And to me, John, the starting point, and Ian, so shout up if you agree or disagree. It's actually understanding what the customer expects as they go through the journey. Yeah, and we'll pick a uncomfortable journey such as complaints. It's understanding what that customer expects and making sure that the capability and the processes you're wrapping around that actually meet that expectations. If they don't, then there's two options. You either uplift it to meet the customer's expectations, or you do some work to set the customer's expectations. And if you do that at the start of your journey analysis, then hopefully you can actually start to build the journey capability.
Yeah, so I think there's a question there, but what I would like to understand, John, is, which you mentioned this customer journey map. I can't quite, are you referring to like a generic map for these particular journeys, or are you talking about like thousands of maps for like every single journey every customer's taken? Like how do you map a customer journey, I guess is my question. Because then that might help me answer like what that means for digital and what Carol is asking.
Yeah, very much so. So the customer journey map ought to be mapped as the customer experiences the organization. So, you know, relatively speaking, it's a simpler view of the touch points that customer will have from the start to the end of their organization. It's not about detailed process mapping of the inner workings and the mechanics of a particular back office function. It's got to focus on the touch points that the customer has, the moments of truth along that touch point, like where is their experience defined, and actually do that end to end. So rather than having siloed processes, it maps the interactions. It might be a letter the customer receives, it might be how they use the website, it might be a telephone call, or it might be a receipt of payment or a delivery of a good or service.
And so you like mapping out the intended journey, and then you can like assess someone against that journey. And is that this talk about expectations and
yeah, exactly. So I think a good one, just picking up, Gary, on your question, was when we did this with a financial services organization, we ran a workshop having identified the iComplain customer journey. We ran a workshop with 30 customers of that particular financial institution that had been involved in the iComplain customer journey. And we sat there and we asked those people on round tables, Leeds Armories, what do they expect at each stage of that journey? So when they initially make a complaint, how do they expect that they receive information about how that complaint is going to be handled? As they go through, what do they expect in terms of being kept up to date? What do they expect in terms of resolution? And we got to 2 hours through that workshop, and nobody had mentioned financial recompense or compensation. And the organisation itself had been focused on, what's the exact criteria by when we're going to give somebody £100 or £200 for trouble and upset in line with the FCA's guidance. But actually what the customers wanted is they wanted to be heard, they wanted to be understood, they wanted their situation to be fixed, and they didn't want any other customers to have to go through their experience. There was very much a philosophical, I think what people often forget is that customers take a lot of effort to contact an organisation. And most of us don't actually want to pick up the phone, write a letter, or get engaged because our lives are busy enough. And therefore, when a customer does contact an organisation, that ought to be respected and it ought to be listened to. And that, go on.
Yeah, and it's the first time, so it's the first time this particular organisation really started to understand, this is what my customer expects. They don't always expect, I'm going to get some compensation here. We were able to identify at these engagement points, this is what I expect. And if you want to hit my moments of truth, this is what I'd like you to do. And then in relation to re-engineering that particular I complain journey, it was then pretty straightforward. And then we could put the metrics in there to actually start to track it. For people on the call, my favorite model on this is the server call model. Understanding the expectations and the perceptions of customers across multiple journeys. It's a good way of taking quality information and quantifying it. So you can use it to measure, but you can also use it to actually re-engineer that particular capability. So that server qual by Parasumo, it's pretty old because I picked it up in university in the 90s, but it is still a really brilliant model that really helps you pull out those sorts of customer expectations.
I think you mentioned earlier in the conversation, Gary, but interesting on customer sort of customer experience and customer expectations, who can get lost in almost delighting the customer on the happy path when it goes really well. But clearly a number of the interactions that we've come across on various transformations are not going to be the happiest of experiences. Something's broken, something's not right, but it's how you meet the expectation in those sort of scenarios. Is that fair? Because a lot of the reasons, and I think to your point, John, of when people contact the customer, even when they haven't reached the point of complaint, but it's usually because they need something to change or something to do. It's not necessarily a delight, but it's more about alignment between expectation and efficiency. Is that a fair call?
I think absolutely, yeah. I remember a particular engagement where when it was to do with debt collection, and the particular process owner was like, they had a bit of challenge with the terminology of, there aren't many customers delighted to get a call from my department, and around that, it's about being fair, I think, and being consistent with customers, and actually making sure that whilst there may be difficult conversations to be had, I think if you are consistent, if you're fair, and that's followed through from start to finish of the journey, then actually you can achieve really good outcomes for customers still. And I think that's sometimes where we found that, you really want to bring customer journey into those parts of the organization that historically wouldn't have engaged with it. So I think people are very familiar with, let's have a wonderful customer experience up front within sales. and sales and marketing are all about, you know, what's the customer experience of onboarding. Well, I think actually there's much more value in what's the customer experience through BAU and and the more difficult elements of that, and sometimes, you know, in customers leaving, but actually making sure that you have consistent, fair customer experience throughout that. And, you know, we also talk about setting your service standards. So do you want to achieve delight? Because how much will it cost your business to delight customers versus do you want to match customers' expectations? Obviously, you never want to underachieve against customer expectations, but really having a consistent view of what your customers expect and what your service standard is throughout the end-to-end of your organization is important.
And the other interesting element we could talk about, because it sort of underpins this win-win approach, is obviously we're talking heavily about making it a really good customer experience in terms of alignment between the customer expectation and then how you deliver it against it. But equally, this sort of customer journey approach is absolutely key to sort of turnaround and operational efficiency. And it's sort of a real win for a company to be able to see where they think individual journeys might be working, but actually repeat contact and falling from one process to the next doesn't necessarily get picked up, but it's a way of unlocking efficiency, I think, and quite a key one for people to understand, because it's a key bit to the business case, depending on where the organization is, in terms of seeing it as a tool to drive internal cost efficiency and as well as benefiting the customer.
Very much so. A poor customer journey ends up with increased back office cost, you know, and front office, because you get more calls, you get more workflows because a customer isn't happy. You haven't met their expectations, so your back office has to work harder, and it get so understanding the expectations, a word we've used a lot, and understanding how your capability is going to meet them is critical. And yeah, and even more so in the digital age. So as I know from your perspective, Ian, understanding those touch points is probably an area that since we work together, you've probably focused on a lot. Do you want to go into a bit more into how the digital experience can underpin the sort of customer journey?
Yeah, so a lot of the time, I think people kind of see these as two like separate, like multiple different kind of topics, right? It's like, what's the digital experience? What's the kind of contact center experience, and like the traditional kind of world before digital? But kind of increasingly, like everything needs to be blended together and designed to like seamlessly hand off from, say, like phoning up a business to going on a website to chatting to web support. All these things need to hand off, and there's a risk quite often you see that they're just not joined up. So yeah, I mean, since we worked on customer journey projects in the past, it was probably just before like the technology and like online chat became really good and useful, and using like Zoom and things like that. So I think it's important. I mean, sure, the answer to your question is, yeah, we need to understand the touch points online, but it's really important not to miss how those touch points interact with non-digital like journeys. Does that make sense?
It does, and I'm going to use my example, and I've been told not to actually turn this into a rant, because clearly I'm a customer and I'm still going through this journey. At this point in time, this is my son's flat, actually. He's moved flat and we need to change the broadband, and I found the broadband provider, and it was brilliant. My first experience with them knocked my socks off. It says, brilliant, you can just pick up your kit, you can take it back, it's fibre, you can plug it in, and that's fine, it'll work. I thought, that is marvellous, you know. One contact and all done. And to be fair, it did work. It did work. But then 2 days later, then I received an email, and basically it's a default to me to the new product journey, and it had put me on a product that I didn't want. It had put me on a product because one, it was 3 times the cost, and clearly my expectations had been set that it was going to be simple. Actually sorting this out has been, from my perspective, has been very challenging, and this is where the sort of digital journey is failing, because I had an email yesterday of an automated response that it still had depreciated on going through a home move, and I'm not a new customer. Yeah. So the alignment of the contact center, the alignment of the business processes and the business rules, and the alignment of the digital technology has failed pretty poorly on this. And it's making sure, from my perspective, that you understand how they need to work together in harmony, because I can say my expectations aren't being met. I'm finding it professionally very satisfying, but if I wasn't doing what I was doing, so if it was my dad or my sister or a friend who didn't do what we do, they'd be looking to move broadband provider by now. They would be exiting. But at this point in time, I'm not in that position.
So I think it's useful in terms of using it as a bit of a case study, and we can talk through some of the things, because it's very easy to think we're thinking the voice of the customer when we're running a customer transformation project. You're still not the customer at the end of it. I guess just for clarity, because obviously we talked through it the other day, you mentioned your first couple of contacts. I think you also mentioned then you had to wait on the phone for 45 minutes. You then got through to someone. They then had a manual process, which they actually kept the line open. So you could hear them default in the background. There wasn't an automated thing. They then had to send it across for another manual process. You've obviously still got ongoing things that you're not properly in the new, or switch to the new journey and just continuing with your existing one. But I guess, John, Ian, in terms of sort of thinking that if you were then helping the broadband provider thinking the other end, I mean, what's the common mistakes that they can make on this?
Well, I think one of the things is actually recognizing through each of those contacts that Gary is a single customer. So being able to follow Gary as he goes through that journey and being able to tie together those experiences. So rather than just scoring one off, that initial contact call that Gary got where they said, yeah, absolutely, you can move your kit and you'll be up and running. If you scored that individually through QA, you go, actually, wonderfully, that colleague handled that call correctly, identified what was going on, perfect. Then Gary's just received a communication that says he's on on a new product. If you looked at that in isolation, if he is actually, from a system technical point of view, on a new product journey, then that's the right piece of correspondence that's gone to the right customer, that's gone at the right time. But actually, it's only through following the customer through their end-to-end journey that you can see that there has been 3 or 4 different calls, that there's been differences in communication between what the website said, the colleague said, the automated email said, and actually then the effort that's caused not just to the customer, but the effort that's caused to the business. And I think this comes to a couple of the points that have been mentioned there. So one of them is that there is a real nice symbiosis, joining together of really putting the customer at your heart of the business and understanding what's going on, and business efficiency. These two things aren't pulling in opposite directions. They're absolutely pulling in the same direction. And therefore, if you look at it through the lens of the customer, you are also looking at it through an efficiency and a process improvement lens. The other thing sort of that Ian brought up there around digital communications. I mean, I think there's an awful lot of chat out there at the moment about AI, chatbots, and the way that's going to move customer interactions forward. So my take on that is that if they can be consistent, if they can be accurate, and if they can efficiently represent what service is going to be delivered, and then importantly, the rest of the organization aligns to that, then actually customers are going to appreciate it, because customers want the least least barriers to receiving the service. The tricky thing, I think, in implementing it is going to be in the alignment of the service. So can chatbots actually deliver an enhanced service than the business is able to keep up with, or vice versa? Are you able to spot correctly what journey the customer is on as they make those inquiries? I think we've all had the experience where you get routed to an automated response, and actually, you know, at the beginning of the conversation that they're probably not going to be able to answer your question. You just need to speak to someone, and therefore there's frustration factors when you have to go through 5 levels of IVR, automated. Is it this? Is it that? Is it this that you want when you make a call? And likewise with an automated chatbot, you know, where you have to answer 5 or 6 scripted questions before you can come to the conclusion that you as the customer knew, I'm going to need to speak to someone.
Well,
So
I'm putting it out there, I just thought of this now, but I don't think the future's too far away where the chatbots can give a well-trained large language model chatbot will probably be better informed than any single human in the company, right? Because it's, if you connect it up right to all the systems and it has, you know, all this data available to it kind of instantaneously, that's going to be probably better informed than a human like looking at this system here and looking at this system there kind of manually all over the place. So then you might actually get a more streamlined, more consistently trained service, because all your chatbots are trained to give you the same service. So you might actually find that there's a world of chatbots that maybe not today, because probably still a few little things to iron out, or maybe it is today, I just haven't found it yet. But yeah, I just thought of that.
I think it
but you've got to make sure that you've got good quality data, you've got your business rules, and you understand the role that the customer's going to play with the chatbot. You understand those expectations, but ultimately you also have a way of measuring the success. So we've spoken about customer journeys, we spoke about expectations, moments of truth. You need to be able to measure it, because you don't want to measure it by actually seeing your reviews on Google Dive. You don't want to measure it by actually seeing yourself on Watchdog. You want proactive measures so you can modify these journeys and how the automation is working. You've got to be rock solid with your data and your metrics. Something I'm very passionate about, as you can probably tell.
So one thing again we've used technology for that, like this new technology, is like automatically by listening essentially to the words and the tone and the conversation, you can give it like a sentiment score, like of how, like you can kind of have these different factors to say, well, on a score of 1 to 10, how happy were they? How dissatisfied were they? And you could like train these models to pick up on that automatically. So, because at the moment, we largely rely on like these surveys, right? At the end of a call says, can you give me a score out of 10? Can you click on this link? And like, there's a pretty low response rate to those things. But yeah, it's been done today. You can totally kind of score automatically. I mean, okay, it's another measure. It's not like necessarily going to replace like direct customer feedback and interviews and scoring, but it's another kind of metric that you can put into things, is that automatic kind of analysis, I guess, of the interactions.
It is, and metrics to me, and being able to measure underpins a good customer journey capability. So metrics of people will be familiar with, such as Net Promoter Score, brilliant, but clearly that's a sort of pull metric you have to go out to actually ask that. Voice of the customer analysis. So that voice of the customer analysis that we did when we were working for a particular client in Leeds, that to me was superb. It really gave us some good qualitative and quantitative information that really helped underpin those journeys. So once you understand your journeys, you understand the moments of truth, you then need to understand how you monitor and then continually improve those journeys. So those to me are the core steps.
And I think one thing that we haven't talked about yet that we should do is around culture. So we've talked about capability in terms of your customer journey maps, your monitoring, and you're improving them. So that's your capability. But your capacity to affect change and your culture to want to affect change, I think, are the other two key elements to this. So where we've seen this run successfully, the customer journeys have been owned around the executive table. Governance forums have been put in place where customer journey owners have to report the performance of their end-to-end journey. So not their particular department within the journey, but the end-to-end customer experience for their journey. They've had to justify how many complaints there are matched against their customer journey, and where their lead and lag indicators are showing that the performance of their journey is reducing or opposite, improving. And having the culture that gives those conversations space at an executive level, and then resources to the teams that can affect change to improve those processes, I think is crucial. This can't work if it's one customer experience manager in an organization.
Completely agree. This is board level sponsorship, and there's objectives, and there's clear metrics, and there's clear articulation of what are our customer journeys and how are we performing to actually meet and sustain those. It has to be at that level. Else, you're right, you just end up with the customer journey cult, which is two or three people in an organization paddling up a waterfall and not going very far. It is
I think another kind of useful thing that we put in place is, great, you've got these sponsors at the top level. And John, at the very beginning, you mentioned like you get really good experts in their particular departments. So for example, in the digital world, you might have your UX designers and UX researchers making like the nicest, smoothest, shiniest front page for your website. But then if you have these like cross-company, like customer, like I haven't thought of a fancy name for it, but like customer champions kind of across the business, then representatives can go along to that and they can make sure that their like shiny homepage is aligned with the messaging that you might get on the letter communications that goes out and so on. And you like bring together these kind of experts across the business in their different silos under the kind of customer champion kind of hat to make sure everything's joined up.
I think so, yeah, definitely. It's about ensuring that each stage of the customer's experience gets the same level of focus and energy within the organization. So I think you're right. There's a great propensity sometimes, isn't there, to get excited about the shiny thing within your department. That might be the digital experience, that might be the efficiency of running a particular back office process. But this is about making sure that actually does all of the organization line up. It doesn't all have to be Rolls-Royce standard, but it's about knowing what is your standard and then consistently delivering against that in all of your messaging to customers, in all of your service delivery to customers, and in terms of all of the actions that you take on behalf of customers. And I think that's then what drives both an efficient business and a really good customer experience. And sort of circling back to the point that you made on how potentially this might move forward over the next few years in terms of automation and artificial intelligence, I think the challenge organizations are going to face there will be how to not get excited about that new shiny thing and then lose focus on some of the fundamental areas that underpin that being implemented in a seamless, efficient and consistent manner.
Yeah,
it's a really interesting one, isn't it, on that flow across, because again, to give one example as a customer, as a thing, we banked for decades with one of the traditional high street banks. So this is not a digital challenger, but we've now gone through the evolution with them that their digital experience, brilliant, work really good. I can do all sorts of stuff. It's absolutely fantastic. But as soon as I want to do something like set up a new bank account, It's horrendous. They still insist on doing their KYC old school. They still want to meet the bank manager, even though the bank manager doesn't quite exist in some way. And actually, it's that flow back, but back to because lots of companies are going through this way in terms of the investment in digital.
Yeah.
But actually, when quite often the touch point is when you want to do something unusual, you drop out of that.
Yeah.
That is where you're getting a lot of the inefficiency. That's where you're getting a lot of the pain, and that flow across and how you track that, and not having the focus just on keeping and sort of improving the bright shiny thing without actually the rest of the organization being able to keep up with the experience.
But if you understand customer journeys, so you understand all the touch points, and this particular example, so I'm familiar with this particular example with you because you've definitely spoke about it, so you know you're not satisfied. But if you understand the customer journeys and what and then what they expect, then it's for you to say, okay, then so how can I develop my capability? It could be 100% digital. Yeah, so it could be 100% digital journey now. However, not all journeys are going to be 100% digital. There's still a need to have people engagement. There might still be a need to have phone engagement instead of chat, but you need to understand that, and you need to help set and manage the customer's expectations. If you continue to do that, then hopefully your back office managing unhappy path work will reduce. If you don't do that, your back office managing unhappy path work will increase, and so will your space.
And I think something that we haven't touched on here, but it doesn't exactly play to that point, Toby, but it occurred to me as you were talking about it. So that's an example where, a particular process for an organization isn't consistent with the rest of their processes, and that's one challenge. I think the other challenge is looking at the different types of customers that interact with your organization. So we've all had experience of working in various regulated organizations, and I think we've got to remember about vulnerable customers. We've got to remember about not all customers are going to be either excited or engaged by the move to ever increasing amounts of digital interaction, and those customers have to be considered through each of these journey maps. So I think, Ian, this plays to sort of the question that you asked earlier on, is do you have many different versions of your customer journey map? I think you don't. Your core customer journeys are the same, but what you need to do is you need to role play, you need to scenario, and you need to understand the various different types of customers as they go through your journey, and make sure it's fit for purpose for all of your customers, and not just those that are at either end of the scale. So everything digital and never want to speak to a human, or really struggling with adopting technology.
I guess this personas, customer personas, is kind of what you would call that, right? Like, making sure that you've got the right breadth of like customer kind of background, I guess, and then to take each of those personas through the journey and to interview them, get their views on it, and make sure you've got the right kind of lens, sort of putting yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, definitely.
Do not design this sort of capability without engaging with your customer, and do not presume that you know your customer's expectations. Do that piece of research, do that piece of design, and make sure that you understand your customer's expectations, or you understand how you're going to manage it. Else you're designing blind.
Keep it going as well, right? Don't sure, do the piece, as it were, but put something in place to kind of continually, whether it be maybe on an annual or every couple of years, for a more detailed deep dive into like customers. So you want to have some ongoing stuff, maybe some like deeper research on an annual basis, perhaps. And
your benefit of that is that your back office OPEX, your back office cost will not be being consumed by managing unhappy path sorts of journeys. It can be focused on actually growing the business.
Now, conscious on time, We've got a few questions, which is great. So what we might do, we'll try and do this as a quick fire, because I mean some of these look, that I'm sure we could have quite a good discussion on them, but we'll just do a bit. Obviously we can see the chat, but not all his handies can. So I'll just quickly call out them, and then we'll just try and do a quick sort of view on each one. So first one's from Tom. Thanks, Tom. Part of the extended dream team. Morning, gents. Happy to hear you talking about iComplain journey, as I worked along with you on that project. Ian raised a question regarding mapping, understanding the end-to-end journey, but would it be worth mapping to process level to see where the potential pain points are specifically? Someone want to have a go at that?
Yes, it would be worth it. But I think, yeah, it's good to have that kind of handoff. Almost, you want to align your process mapping with your customer journey mapping, and then is it level 2? I don't know. I haven't read the textbook for a while, but you want to be clear where one of the sort of swim lanes in your customer journey map could align to your process maps, and then you could then drill down to a lower level to get the root cause of the particular pain point, especially if you're seeing it occurring several times for several different customers, and it's not a one-off.
And so we're not saying that customer journeys replace processes. Definitely not, because you need processes to help you actually manage and maintain that customer journey. But understanding the inputs, so as again, from a tooling perspective, doing your SIPOCs, understanding the inputs and the outputs for that particular process. Well, usually down at level 4 for those people who understand processes. Then if you can map that and then see how that supports the moment of truth. So the key thing is if it's a moment of truth as the customer comes into this processes and leaves that process. If it is, then make sure you understand how that process is going to work.
Cool. Thank you on that one. We're bounce to the next one. So morning, Simon. This is a big one, and I'm not sure we're solving it on the call, but I'll call it out and we'll just briefly touch on it. So sounds like you're having a fun time with solar panels being installed. It was outsourced to 8 different companies: scaffolder, roofer, solar fitter, electricians, electricity certification, energy provider, financial, and E.ON departments. How would you approach joining that journey, as each company owned their part, and I have faults with 5 of them? So aside from commiserations of it sounds like you can compete with Gary on who's having a bad experience, any thoughts?
I think it's an interesting one there in terms of how you bring together the disciplines that we've got. So a lot of that, I think, is going to be around making sure that at the point of engaging those various different suppliers, the one supplier who's responsible for the sale has good commercial agreements in place with those various teams, and that actually outcomes are measured throughout that customer journey. And if you start the process with those suppliers from a customer-centric point of view, as opposed to a volumetric point of view, then and actually sell the benefits, as we've talked about in this session, of I'm sure for each of those scaffolders, roofers, and the faults, we've had a very similar situation with our boiler install or maintenance. Actually, the maintenance people have to keep coming out, and and the scaffolders, whoever it is, so there really is this symbiosis between customer experience and delivering against that, and cost and efficiency. And in this example where you've got various suppliers, I think you need to have the right commercial framework around that. And I think that's something that we've seen within organizations we've worked with.
And make sure your suppliers actually understand what the customer journey they're supporting. So if you go to your supplier and say, do you know you're supporting this customer journey? And the supplier goes, what's a customer journey? You probably haven't had the right sort of onboarding and engagement of that supplier in the first place. So make sure that when you're working with your third parties, as John said, you're setting up your commercials. It's not just about the processes they're going to execute for you. It's the customer journey that they're supporting.
And I think just briefly close that one. Someone who commented further about none would take ownership for the issues. I think to that onboarding, let's say clearly this is all from the supplier point of view, not from the customer point of view, but in terms of setting up your supply chain, both setting that expectation as part of onboarding your supply chain, so you know what part they play in the customer journey, but also having commercials that incentivize and penalize that, because clearly if they're incentivized to just do a quick job and get out and they're on a tight margin, but actually they have no impact in terms of the downstream experience and any error rates, then you sort of incentivize the wrong commercial behavior from those buyers. And I think we probably all had customer interactions where we're faced with the technician or the service operator, whoever who's trying to service you wants to do a better job, but they're not allowed to. They're on very tight timelines and where they're allowed to do that. I think a couple of those segue. So a couple of comments comes up as anonymous, but main issue is that silo one makes the individual only look at their part and not the whole issue. Absolutely, I think we touched on a bit. And interestingly, I mean, we've been involved in several turnarounds and seen a number of others where actually they're not massively focused on the customer. They're absolutely drowning in terms of the operational impacts, but it's the focus on the customer that helps unlock it. Because if they're just closing their particular process in isolation and it just keeps erroring out, and then that person keeps turning back up somewhere else in the operation, you just can't turn it around from an operational point of view. So it's very much a tool, even if a particular company isn't massively focused on in terms of a strategy on the customer side. Morning, Joe. Got a couple of interesting ones here. So agree the chatbot space is moving at pace and some really useful tech. Certainly seeing certain senior stakeholders getting excited by new shiny tech. How much importance should be placed on customer personas and target demographics alongside journeys? Surely this is key. Question for
yeah. I'd certainly agree with that, and I think that sort of plays to the point that we were saying there about not all customers have the same expectations or capabilities, and therefore really understanding customer personas as they go through the journey is critical to delivering service that will meet those expectations. So yeah, agree with you, Joe.
I would just add that like every customer is still unique and different. Like personas are a good way to kind of maybe simplify somewhat how you might go about designing for these like broad customer groups, but still like we're still at danger of falling into silos again, right? Because they don't fully encapsulate every customer, or like they might overlap different elements of them. And I think Joe's got a comment further down as well along these lines. So I think it's important to kind of continually assess these because like people learn more, things change in the external environment and technology, and like the one day's kind of tech, yesterday's not tech savvy is a bit more tech savvy with certain kinds of technology. But also to make sure that when you are assessing these customer journeys, you're kind of your sample approach, your approach to sampling these different customer journeys kind of is not biasing them to one journey or persona or the other. So you are kind of assessing them fairly against like just how was that individual's interaction with the thing they were trying to do, their expectation.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, Ian, and the one that Joe's made there. And that's why I think it kind of comes back to this point about culture, capability and capacity. So where we've worked with organisations, and I think it's our philosophy across the piece, is that we want to uplift that capability. And therefore, and from that point, that capability has to live and breathe within the organisation. And so, you know, you can't take a photograph of the world as it is today and think that it's going to be the same 3 years down the line. Customer expectations are going to have moved. Expectations around service delivery are going to have moved. So you need to embed that culture and that capability and that capacity within your organization to keep it moving apace with both technology and customer expectations.
Fantastic. Couple others. So again, can you write in the chat the name of the model used for measuring customer experience? we
I
will, but Gareth, can you say it as well, just in case people can't see the chat?
Yes, yeah, I will do that after this. Yeah, it's a server qual is the model for understanding your customer's expectations, and there's also server perform, which then gives you the ability to actually measure from a qualitative and quantitative perspective. I can see a question. It's made me smile, Toby. Says I can see a question of one of my ever sort of says a old boss of mine that goes back many years ago when I was working in customer off James, and what James has asked is to make it says Gary, you spoke about two options: raising service or managing expectations. To make a decision on the right path, how do you actually manage the impact of doing either? Customer retention, sales, cost, etc. Now, for me, this is where you need to play a role in setting customers' expectations. Yeah, and I'll give you my. We don't often call out companies here. I'll give you my Lidl versus Waitrose example. Now, I have a completely different set of expectations going into Lidl because the way they've structured their model as I do with Waitrose. So although I'm actually going to go and purchase a tin of beans, my expectations have already been set by those particular organisations. I expect to get served far quicker in Waitrose. It's not always the case, but then I do it in Lidl, and I expect to get a greater choice. So my expectations have been set. So if you can set your customers' expectations, then retention, sales, and costs will hopefully be controlled. If you don't help set your customer expectations, then you're going to drive costs into the back office. And it's nice to see you on the call, James.
That's great. Thank you. So I think we've worked through all the questions that have come up. Conscious of not running for an hour, that people have follow-up meetings and give me a few minutes to go and grab a coffee or whatever before the next one. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, all panelists. Love that discussion. That was really good. We'll do a few more like this, I think. Equally from guests, if you do have any feedback, if there's other bits you'd like to see, please let us know. We'll do the same as we do with all the other webinars, in that we have some standard frameworks and other materials that might help you. We'll share stuff. You're welcome to use it. As I always say, if all you needed was the framework and you could go and do it, then please do. But equally, if there's anything where you want support, you want to pick over stuff, you want help, yeah, we're more than happy to follow up. But thank you very much, and hope you have a great day.
Cheers.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you.
Bye.
Cheers.